Well, good evening. Good evening. My name is Kelly Lynn. I've seen some familiar faces out here, but some of you I don't know. But it was good to see some familiar faces from days gone past. I'll tell you, back here behind me to my left, this guy right here, Command Sergeant Major Scalise was my right-hand man in Afghanistan. I'm telling you, you're lucky to have it. He was a good dude. Still a good dude, I guess. I'll tell you tonight that I have so much to be humbled by, to be here. This organization has provided so much in my life. I'll tell you, I joined the National Guard back in 2007 in Arkansas, and then I was enlisted. I was a 42 Alpha. Any 42 Alphas in here? Yeah, I heard a little. Well, I mean, I had a brother and a roommate at the time that convinced me to go 42 Alpha. Man, you will never. You're not gonna. This was in 2007, in the middle of the surge in Iraq, and they were just sitting. If you could walk upright and hold a rifle, you were in, baby. Come on down. We'll take you. But they had convinced me to do that for whatever reason, because I was a single dad at the time. And they were hoping that I would get deployed. Well, I finished my AIT and whatnot, came home, and in November I finished my AIT, and I came home, and 2 days before Christmas in December, they called me up and said, "Hey, we need you to go to Iraq." And I said, "Oh man," but I just got put into the officer candidate school. So they called me back and said, "We'd rather you go to officer candidate school before we send you to Iraq. So how about we do that?" So I was enlisted for a little bit, but then I came over as a field artillery officer, and I was in the Arkansas Guard for that for a little bit before I came to Oklahoma. And I came to Oklahoma straight into officer candidate school, and that was one of the biggest rewarding positions of my life. I don't know if anybody's into here, but to be able to participate in the commissioning and developing young leaders, and we did hundreds and hundreds across the United States in those years that I was in there, because we worked with programs across the United States. It's very rewarding to develop those leaders. Now, if you look in your things that has the information about me in it, there's a whole lot of things that give you accolades in life, a whole lot of titles that I've achieved and accomplished, but it all doesn't mean a whole lot to me without pointing out the struggles that people have faced. And I've never really talked about some of this stuff that I'm going to talk to you about, but I'll tell you while you're sitting here. I read a little bit about you guys and what you've done, and tell me if it's true that you're the most decorated campaign company or unit or battalion in the Oklahoma National Guard from all the different wars. Is that right? You don't know that? Well, all that shows is service to others, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about tonight. Everything that I've ever done, all these accolades. Currently, I'm a judge in 2 different cities. I'm a lawyer, been a captain in the military, been an elected official, all kinds of titles and nonsense, but it is all about service to others. It's not about chasing those titles or anything like that. And it's about resiliency when you face things in your life. Man, it just seems so hard. How do I keep going? You just have to execute. You have to execute. So, but I'm a guy that statistically, I shouldn't be up here. I should have been dead or in prison quite a long time ago when I was a young guy. So I don't know what you're going to get from me while I'm up here. It might be a little bit across a politician. It might be a little bit stand-up comedian. It might be a little bit of pastor, because I just finished 12 hours chasing my master's in divinity at Liberty University. It might be a little bit of military. It might be a little bit of everything. But here we go. I'm going to tell you some things about me, because I think that the true thing about accomplishing things is not what you accomplished, it's what you faced during that time, the adversity, the things that you've overcome. A little bit about me. I was raised, my father was a preacher. The preacher man, the preacher kids, everybody's heard about the preacher's kids and how they're the worst. I guarantee you I lived up to that 1,000%. I grew up in a foster home that was with my parents, but I guarantee you that it was every bit a foster home, even though it was my parents that were running it. We had about 60 kids come through there. Sometimes we had 13 kids at a time. When I was in 4th grade, I had a smoke hanging out of my mouth while I was tattooing a 17-year-old. I guarantee you that living in a foster home, even though it was my parents, had an effect on me. As we went on through life, had a pretty normal life growing up, and then my dad got sick when I was probably about 11. He got esophageal cancer. He went on for a few years battling that. And when I was 13 years old, I remember just like it was yesterday, I was standing in my living room, looked at my dad, and the last words I ever heard him say is, "I'm not ready to die." So my dad left us when I was 13 years old. And that was rough on my brother and I. But we pushed on. I mean, I got in all kinds of trouble when I was younger. We're kind of like the Duke boys. Some good old boys who never meant so harm, or never made any harm, but been in trouble with the law since the day they were born. I guarantee you that's true. Going through high school, we were such hellions and ruffians in Poto, Oklahoma. If anybody knows where that's at in this state, a little town of Poto. There wasn't much to do there besides drink beer, chase girls, and fist fight. And the beer would run out, the girls would go home, there wasn't much left to do, so we'd fist fight on the weekends. We got in all kinds of trouble. Literally, it's true that the police chief had my brother and I's 18th birthdays circled on the calendar. They were looking forward to that. They pretty much literally ran us out of that town because what hellions we were. And during that time, I had a sister that was in a bad way, that was just dragging me through drug dens. And, I was watching people shoot up in their arms. It was just kind of a rough time. After my father died, we just went kind of wild. Luckily, made it down the road. Another statistic: teenage pregnancy. Had a kiddo when I was 17 years old in high school. Still made it out with that. Another statistic. Eventually moved down the road, got married, got divorced, became a single father. I got custody of my kiddos, raising kids as a young 20 years old. And then finally I came to the decision to join the National Guard. And that was one of the best decisions of my life. I was the old man. I was 28 years old when I went to basic. They called me grandpa. Got injured. I really was. I felt old. But like I said, and it was a wild time because there weren't a whole lot of standards to who they were letting in at the time. So there were some ruffians with us. There were gang members. It was 2007. Seriously, it was true. If you walked upright, had a heartbeat, could hold a rifle, you were in the military almost. There were not many standards. If you could breathe, carry a rifle, you were in. And it made going through some of that training pretty rough because there were some rough characters. Sometimes it felt more like prison than basic training. Even before that time, I have quite a few accolades in life, but at one point I was even homeless as a teenager. It's hard to imagine. I could stand up here in front of you, the things that I've faced in life, the positions that I've obtained, and know that I was once a homeless teenager. That was for a short period of time because I was trying to get my act straight, but it was something. I was sleeping in a car. Paid $900 for a Lincoln. This Lincoln Town Car, man, it was sweet. It was a sweet Lincoln Town Car. It had about 27,000 miles on it from one lady had owned it. Bought it for $900, and it had a pretty comfortable back seat, I'll tell you that. Like I said, I joined the Guard, went through that training, and some resiliency, adversity. At that point in life, I'd been through all kinds of things with death of my father, my run-ins with the law, all kinds of crazy stuff. I was so apt to get into basic training. I was thrilled that I made it there and got it there. You have to have some resiliency, because in about the third week of my basic training, I broke my leg. And I kept on going. I had looked, and there were these people in this medical unit at basic training that had looked like they were zombies. They looked so miserable, and some of them had been there 9, 10, 12 weeks in that medical thing. So I pushed on. I literally had a broken leg and pushed on, and I traded my granola bars and any other food I could sneak out of the dining hall for ibuprofen. 800 milligram ibuprofen. Because sometimes you just have to execute. You have to finish the mission you're on when it's in front of you. You do what you can. You push through that adversity. You have to look at it. You have to know that you can accomplish what's in front of you. No matter what pops up, you can do it. That is the mental toughness, the resilience. I remember the first time I had resiliency training in the military. I know that's everybody's favorite thing, some resiliency training. I thought it was the biggest nonsense I'd heard. It was back in 2011 when they first introduced it, and it was in our infantry, or not our infantry, but our basic officer course there for field artillery. And man, I can tell you, that kind of irritated a guy. You gotta get in touch with your feelings, icebergs. I don't know if y'all know this resiliency training, talking about icebergs and scratching the surface and whatnot. It seemed like a bunch of nonsense, but I promise you, there is something to the resiliency, whether you take that training for what it's worth or not. Resiliency, being able to stand up against something when it comes your way, when it feels like your world's crumbling. When the weight of the world is pressing on you, you got to be able to be resilient and push on and execute whatever's in front of you. Like I said, I've faced lots of adversity. I mean, I went to OCS the first time, got into it. We went to it when I was with the Arkansas Guard in 2009, 2008 maybe. Went to Kansas, where they have the traditional program. You go 2 weeks, you come back for 12 months, and you do 12 weekends, then you go for 2 more weeks in, at the time it was in Fort Lewis, Washington. Well, I went and did my 2 weeks, came back. They're wanting me to go to an accelerated course in Pennsylvania. I only had right at 59 credits at the time. I had to have a waiver to get in with missing 1 credit. You had to have 60 credits at the time to even join the traditional program. Well, they came to me and said, hey, you did such a good job at the traditional program. We'd like to send you for the rest of it accelerated, which was, stroked this guy's ego a little bit. I was like, yeah, I rock and rolled it. Let's do this. Well, what do I have to do? Well, I had to knock out 31 college credits in 5 weeks, which I was able to do through Dante's exams. If you don't know about Dante's exams while you're going to school, it's like a CLEP exam. It's free to the military. You get credit for it. I was able to knock out 31 hours by taking 1 class in that 5 weeks and then taking those exams. Sometimes you just have to execute. Seemed insurmountable, but I did it, and I went. You know what? And I went, and I made it to the very last day of that officer candidate school, and I failed. They failed me out. I was one of 14 guys that had come in after they'd already done their first phase and phase 2, and 13 of us, of the 14, went home. 1 guy survived and graduated that officer candidate school. I thought, I'm done with this nonsense, because I promise you, it was hard. It was hard business. But then I had people that believed in me that came back around and said, no, we're sending you back. We want you to be in the Corps with us, and we believe in you. So they sent me back. And this time I felt like I was an expert on the whole thing. I'd already done the course. And it was easy. Seemed easy. But one of the proudest moments I ever had was graduating from the Alabama Military Academy, Accelerated Officer Candidate School. That is the gold standard for the Guard, I promise you that wasn't tough. I promise you that was tough. I was in there with Green Berets that are like, they were having a pretty good time. They said, "Hey, man, this is pretty tough." It was no joke to go through that, and being in there, just being resilient to even go through that once and face defeat, then be able to come back and do it. Man, I didn't want to do that for anything. I did it because I had people believing in me and pushing me to do it. I didn't want to be there for any reason in life. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do my 6 years and get out of the guard. I was so ticked about the first go around. I was like, I'm done with this. But I pushed on and I executed. I had further adversity in my life. I have a brother that was an Oklahoma National Guard member. Captain William Kendall Lynn. I don't know if any of you know him. Some of you might. But highly decorated, also a Deputy United States Marshal. We had quite the relationship growing up. I say if I ever have been tough at all in life, it's because I had that big brother that made me tough whether I liked it or not. But back in 2016, February 15th, I got a call while I was sitting in my t-shirt shop. It was a call that said, no caller ID, and it was after 5 o'clock. Usually I wouldn't answer that, but I did answer that. There was an Olathe Police Department detective telling me my brother had killed himself. Here you are, this highly decorated soldier, this United States Marshal. You get a call like that. It's one of the 22 a day. That PTSD that we face. And I could look through this room and I guarantee you there's not a one of you that haven't been touched by that somehow in this organization or across this organization. The Army as a whole. You felt that somewhere. You've known somebody. So what do we do with that? Do I break down? I might be right now. But do you break down? Do you hole up? Do you waller in your misery? Or do you go do something about it? We went and we executed. We started an organization called 22 Shenanigans. And in this organization, we take guys with PTSD, we provide them events. I mean, it's amazing what a fishing trip, what good that does for somebody. It's amazing because, like I said, we just went to execute and start this organization, this nonprofit for veterans facing this, take them out, do these events. And like I said, something as simple as a fishing trip, somebody calls you up and said, "Hey man, that changed my life. I was thinking about killing myself. I've been 30,000 feet in the air because of this organization. I've got a hold of somebody's reached me. They had a pistol in their mouth. I was able to get a hold of their wife and family members. And they're still here on this earth." Sometimes you just execute. I hate to say it, I've been a politician. It's a dirty word to me, politician. But when my community was in need, after some really crazy times in 2020, they were looking for somebody to step up. What I do, I threw my officer evaluation report from my time with this guy in Afghanistan. And that time prepared me well for what was needed for that city. So when it was needed, I mean, I'd say you're in the city right now, Norman. It's a crazy place sometimes politically. Our police were defunded in 2020, and they were trying to shut churches for COVID and masks and all kinds of different things. So when they were looking for somebody to step up, I executed. We fixed every problem that the city was facing at the time. We refunded the police. We did it from the super minority. But when you're doing the right things, you're trying to create that resilience, you're going to be able to execute those things that make a difference. And wherever you're at in your career right now, it's up to you. You can take that as far as you want. You can be a command sergeant major. You can be a general. Those are all up to you and what you decide to execute in your life. I was lucky to get in the military. I so wanted to do that. Man, then I thought, hey, being an officer looks cool. Step off, try to do that. It was just execute. I heard a preacher when I was in Nicaragua last month. This preacher was from Florida. But, I mean, he had this one thing that stuck with me. Sometimes you just step off. You step off with a guess and a prayer. And when you're doing it, when you're trying to get go through your career and get these schools and make that rank and stuff, it's all up to you. It's all up to you. It's in front of you. You just have to execute. Just step off. Take the first step. Don't let fear cripple you from moving forward and whatever you're doing, that resiliency. Things happen in life all the time. Don't let them cut off your destination, your path, your journey. You might have to readjust. That's what we're good at. Man, if you ever had to show up for ready to pull out, you might show up at 4 o'clock and you might not even step off till 10 a.m. You're like, why were we here at 4 o'clock? Well, that's preparation. It's making sure everything's going great. Doesn't always have to be like that. But you're there, prepared to execute when the call comes. Like I said, I've been sitting here telling you about some of the diversity I faced. That sister I was talking about that drug me through those drug dens. Just in July, I had to sit there and watch her be removed from life support because of the decisions and a life that she chose to live. What do you do with those situations? You let them melt you? You let them crumble you? You just break underneath those things that are just weighing down on you? No, you have to be resilient. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to control your emotions in the situations you're facing. You all have this uniform on. That says that you want to serve people. And there's no higher calling in this life than to serve people. I couldn't have gotten to anywhere that I've gotten. It's all been about service. It's all been with the hand of God, the support of my lovely family. This is my beautiful wife sitting over here in the blue dress. I point her out now. She's the one in the blue dress with her face turning red rapidly. Just coming from a guy that has faced so much diversity, so many things that I could have given up at any time. Somehow I fumbled my way into all these kinds of things about lawyer, a judge, military officer. One of the things I'm proud of is having this 22 Shenanigans nonprofit where we service our fellow veterans and whatnot. The other one is have a nonprofit for kiddos in sports. I don't know if y'all remember if you ever saw this, it went totally viral. The little kid last year in the Little League World Series, he got hit in the head, went down, went to first, and then he went out and hugged the pitcher from the other team. Well, that little kid that went out and hugged that pitcher is my good friend's son, and we started a nonprofit called the Jarvis Sportsmanship Foundation to be able to help veterans, children's, and underprivileged children, underprivileged youth to be able to afford sports opportunities and scholarships for their endeavors. Why did we do that? Because it was an opportunity, and we executed on that opportunity to take that momentum of that good situation and pass it on to as many people as we could, trying to make something good out of that moment that was bad. And that's what it is. It's looking at the lining of the cloud, and you can always find a silver lining in everything. Even with the death of my brother, I've been able to create an organization that has saved other people's lives. That's a powerful thing. So while I'm humbled to be here tonight, and I appreciate you having me, I could have went and talked about my accolades and things of achievement, but I'd rather tell you about the things that I've faced that are adversity. So when you're up against it, know if a hobo like me can do the things that I've done, you're unstoppable as well. Thank you for having me tonight, and I appreciate you very much.